Hello, I'm Demis Helen and welcome to the final episode in this mini Cubase 13 series, and we're going to be taking a look at using some traditional Cubase plugins alongside some of the new ones on bus tracks, so you can get an idea of how we can use this in a bus environment. Okay, so let's focus on the bus track in question, and this is the kick and bass bus. So just scrolling down here in my mix, we can see we've got kick and our sub here. And then just down here, I've got our kick and bass bus. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to drag it below the kick so we can see my bass, kick, and my bus track are all here. And I'm going to make these three larger so we can see where we're working. So with the kick and bass bus, we can see the EQ P1A and a tube compressor. We're shaping the sound here with the EQ, creating warmth, creating weight in the sound, and then we're using a tube compressor to sort of add some glue to the sound using the drive and the compression. So let's take a look at what's happening first. Let's have a listen to this kick and bass bus. So you can see with these two plugins, I'm adding even more focus into the low end and really shaping how this sounds in the mix. So again, I'm going to bypass these effects like I just did. When it gets to 77, 81 and 85, I'll turn it on and off so you can hear the difference. You'll be able to see that these plugins stop moving as well. So from that, you can see hand in hand, the P1A and the tube compressor work really well together. They add warmth, character, depth, glue, everything that the track needs to sound finalized and sound warm and inviting to be listened to. Turning them off, we lose all of that and it sounds well balanced, but it just sounds flat and it doesn't have anything pulling the track together and giving it the weight it needs. So the P1A, we've got the low frequencies and the highs. The lows, obviously, we are focusing in on the kick body and also the bass. And then the highs, we're focusing mainly on the kick because there's no information for the bass in that section. And then the tube compressor is adding some drive and also just gentle compression. You can see about -2 to -4 dB there, give or take, with 100% mix, so we're not getting any of the original signal coming through after this point. So as usual, let's load in a P1A, brand new. And for now, we'll leave the compressor as it is. We'll just put it after in the chain and we'll turn off that P1A. So that's our original and this is the one we're working on here. So what we want to do with this is boost the low end, but in a nice warm and very broad manner, but adding the characteristics that the P1A brings. We could do this with a normal EQ, say the studio EQ, but we're just going to get a boost. We're not going to get the character of this particular EQ and what it has to offer. So let's have a listen to how this sounds. I've got this bypassed. This is how it sounds just with the compressor on and the EQ at 0. So I'm going to tune the low frequency with the boost up so we can get that warmth balanced in. So I've dialed it in to about 65 Hertz because that is roughly what we did with that respace in the previous episodes. And then the boost is balanced based on where that low frequency sits right. So by ear, around 65 Hertz, somewhere in that region sounds good. The boost is way too much when we turn it up, so I've balanced it back out. And you can see it was around 3.9 to 4 on the boost. And just bringing it up to that 4.4 mark, you could hear that it just brought that warmth in, but not too much. And if we push it that little bit further, you could hear it was too much and it was starting to crunch a little bit. So that sounds really good. So pre the brand new EQ. You can hear that warmth is lovely on that. So then I've used the bandwidth to control between the two. So we're going to set up the highs next, and then we can control that bandwidth. So next up, we're going to focus on the high frequency. So this is mainly for the kick, nothing really to do with the bass. And it's really just to bring it a little bit further out of the mix, but in a controlled manner with that bass and obviously the compression on here. So it sounds a little bit squelchy and a bit wishy-washy at this area. So I'm just pushing it up to where it sounds about right. And I'm not just copying what I can see here, I'm just using my ears, and I can hear around there is sounding about right. And again, we don't need to use that attenuator because we want to retain the quality. That sounds about right there. And then we can now move into the bandwidth area, and I'm just going to show you what this does without talking. So what's happening with the bandwidth is controlling like the high boost, and you can hear we're just balancing between the low and the highs, and we can just have that last little bit of control of how them two are working together. And around that sort of 5.9, 6.5 area is sounding pretty good. We get a lot of high end coming through at 0. And a lot of suppression at the full 10. So we want somewhere between that. And you can hear that we've got a nice blend between the two. We've got the warmth, we've got the power, we've got the character and the tone out of it. And then with the tube compressor, you can see here, I've boosted the input to about 6.1. So I'm really just sort of boosting it so that we're getting some of the crunch from the drive that I've dialed in there to get that saturation coming through. And then you can see here a low ratio, sort of slow attack. It's still sort of crushing the kick a little bit there because we're not too interested in the transients in this mix. And then a quick release to sort of switch off the compressor as quick as possible, but just adding that lovely warm crunch to it. So the final result, we have this. What a lovely sound that is. It really does finish off the mix. When I was building this track, you get used to it, you get the ear fatigue, and you can hear that it sounds balanced, it sounds nice, but then when you come back, you can hear that it just lacks that power, and that bus track of just having the kick and the bass going through the same bus lane, EQ P1A and obviously the tube compressor do wonders for this track, and you can hear it just adds tons of character and warmth to the track. And there we have it. That brings us to the end of the series. Hopefully you've gathered enough information from there to implement some new ideas into your productions and use the plugins in conventional ways and unconventional ways as well. Don't forget, there are no limits to how music can be produced, and if you think there is a way that you can make something different and more unique, Cubase 13 has you covered. And with that said, I'm Dennis Helen, and I will look forward to seeing you in another series in the future. Take care. You can see from that.